Following the now infamous AEW All Out post-show brawl, we now have an update on the first casualty from said brawl, as Ace Steel has officially been released by the company. We've got the latest details on that, as well as the futures of CM Punk, the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, and more. Plus, Hangman Page suffers a really serious injury last night on Dynamite. We've got the latest from Page, AEW releasing a statement, and the outside reactions to the injury on Dynamite. MJF has revealed when he will be challenging for the AEW World Championship at Full Gear in November. Plus, MJF goes face-to-face with William Regal last night on Dynamite. Riho returns to AEW. Plus, we have an update on the latest Ring of Honor pay-per-view. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of All Elite Wrestling, especially after last night's special Tuesday night edition of Dynamite, titled Tuesday, it was called. But the first story we have to get into here is something that didn't happen on Dynamite. It's something that happened several weeks ago now at All Out, because we have the first casualty with the Brawl Out situation, with that infamous brawl that happened after the show, including CM Punk, Ace Steel, Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, all of the producers which were suspended. Of course, the Bucks, Omega, Punk, and Ace Steel were all suspended, but now one name has officially departed the company, because AEW trainer and producer Ace Steel has now officially been released following the brawl after All Out media scrum that saw the suspension of a number of wrestlers whilst the company investigated the incident. Now, of course, the incident in question here took place on September 4 and saw CM Punk verbally attack several members of the AEW locker room, which would turn into a physical altercation as some members of the locker room took offense to Punk's word, namely Kenny Omega, Matt Jackson, and Nick Jackson. Now, in the aftermath of this behind-the-scenes brawl, CM Punk, Ace Steel, Kenny Omega, Matt Jackson, Nick Jackson were all suspended while this incident was investigated. Now, other names were also investigated at the time. Names like Pat Buck, Michael Nakazawa, Brandon Cutler, etc. They were just people that were trying to break up the incident. They have since been unsuspended. They have since been restored, and they have gone back to their day-to-day operations within AEW. But those key figures involved, Punk, Steel, Omega, and the Young Bucks, are all still suspended, apart from Ace Steel, because it now appears that the results of the investigation are finally being revealed, with the first release being made on Tuesday, October 18, that being last night. Because speaking on Wrestling Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer has confirmed that Ace Steel is no longer with All Elite Wrestling. He stated, quote, "He was officially released yesterday, so that is the first bit of news out of that whole situation in weeks. But yes, he was released, and there's a lot of other stuff going on, but it's just stuff going on. But there's nothing really else to it, but he was released yesterday." Now, this comes off the back of actually a little bit of a reference to both Punk and the Elite on Dynamite last night. On last night's episode of Dynamite, prior to Death Triangle's title defense against Best Friends, Tony Schiavone acknowledged the fact that Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks were crowned as the inaugural AEW World Trios champions at All Out last month. In contrast, there was no mention of the Elite when Death Triangle captured the vacated titles on September 7th, or when they defended the titles against the Dark Order on October 7 on Rampage. Similarly, AEW President Tony Khan didn't make any mention of the Elite status or being stripped of the titles when he announced a match to crown the new champions last month. Now, later on in the show, because it wasn't just the Elite that were mentioned, later on in the show, CM Punk did appear in a video package honoring the legacy of the Ring of Honor World Championship prior to the Chris Jericho versus Dalton Castle title bout. Again, this was the first instance of Punk appearing in archival footage, namely, but still appearing on AEW TV since the backstage altercation last month. Now, Punk was actually left off of a similar video package on the Road to AEW YouTube shows prior to the recent Jericho versus Bryan Danielson and Jericho versus Bandito title matches too. Furthermore, Ring of Honor announcer Ian Riccoboni specifically left off Punk from the greatest ROH World Champions prior to the Jericho versus Claudio Castagnoli title match at Dynamite Grand Slam last month. Now, it must be said, he did list off a load of Ring of Honor World Champions last night, and Punk was still left off that list. Nevertheless, him appearing on television in archival footage, some are seeing it as significant. Now, it's unknown if the off-air mentions, or the on-air mentions rather, are a sign of AEW gradually welcoming the Elite and CM Punk back into the fold. It's worth noting that the wrestlers are still not featured in any AEW promotional material on TV and were recently removed from the poster of the Full Gear pay-per-view. According to reports, AEW President Tony Khan has refrained from speaking on the infamous backstage melee, easy for me to say, involving Punk and the Elite due to possible legal ramifications stemming from this ongoing investigation. So let's take this bit by bit. When it comes to the references last night, I noticed that. The reason I noticed that, and I think a lot of other people noticed that, was because, again, they were erased from television in recent weeks. So the fact that you're getting name drops and you're getting them appearing in video packages does feel somewhat significant. Maybe it's a case of, again, whilst they figure everything out from a legal perspective, now it's the case of the lawyers maybe saying to Tony Khan and to AEW production, you can put them in the video package. That doesn't really affect things. It's trying to find where the boundary is and where the lines are. And maybe it's a case of the legal people, I think, they're saying you can put them there. It doesn't really matter. I think that's probably a case of that. Regarding the Ace Steel situation, of course, Ace Steel, even prior to yesterday, it was a couple of days prior to that, Ace Steel put on his Twitter account. Now, his Twitter account is private, so nobody really saw it. It was actually Wrestle Purists who posted this on social media. Ace Steel put on his Twitter account a clip from the Blues Brothers film where Aretha Franklin is singing a song and she says, freedom, 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 implying that he finally had freedom from All Elite Wrestling, so it shouldn't come as much of a surprise that Ace Steel was now gone from the company. However, the reason this is significant is, one, because we're starting to see outcomes and decisions being made off the back of what happened at All Out. One of the people involved, one of the principal parties involved in this brawl, has been fired from the company. That's what's happened here. Ace Steel has been fired because of what happened at All Out. So seemingly, this AEW investigation, this internal or external investigation, whatever you want to call it, third-party investigation, has come to the conclusion that what Ace Steel did, his behavior at All Out, was grounds for him being dismissed from the company. That's significant because that would imply that maybe this investigation is further along than was previously reported a couple of days ago. It's also significant because the general assumption was that if Ace Steel left AEW, then CM Punk wouldn't be far behind him, whether it was in solidarity with his longtime friend and trainer or because these were the people in the wrong in this instance. Ace Steel, of course, it's been widely reported via multiple sources and via multiple reports and via multiple people, eyewitnesses, that saw everything that happened. It's been widely accepted, and there's physical proof of Kenny Omega's appearance when he was in Japan, but it's been widely reported that Ace Steel bit Kenny Omega on the arm and he pulled his hair. And AEW seemingly has investigated this incident and seen that and seen Ace Steel's behavior and said, because of that, you are now going to be fired from the company. The question now remains, what is the status of CM Punk? The rest of the parties, it would appear, are still suspended. They are still away from AEW. However, CM Punk, he's the interesting one now, because is he going to follow his friend out of the company? It kind of does depend too on the circumstances of how Ace Steel has departed the company. If Ace Steel went to AEW and said, I don't care what happened, if you want to fire me, that's fine, but I want to leave, I want to quit, I'm asking for my release, grant me my release, that's a bit different to him being fired, because if he's been fired, then maybe CM Punk could look at that and say, that's BS, that's not fair, I'm going to sue this company, or this, that, and the other. If Ace Steel says, I want to go, let me go, that can be a little bit different. So again, it depends on how this has worked. I suspect it might be more of a case of Ace Steel wanting to be released as opposed to Ace Steel getting fired, and it's a situation whereby it's best for everyone involved. But again, Punk, he's still got a lot of money left on the table here. He's still got time left on his contract. He's still not going to be able to wrestle for 9 months. And ultimately, if things could be hashed out, which I don't think they can, CM Punk could still be very valuable to AEW. He's been their highest merchandise mover. He's been their top draw. He's sold out pay-per-views and sold out arenas for AEW. So I would assume maybe still in Tony Khan's mind or in AEW's mind, they're thinking if we can figure this out, we can still make money with this guy. So there's still a lot of ambiguity going on here, but certainly this is the first big bit of news, really, since everyone was suspended in the first place, that one of the principal parties involved has left the company. We don't really fully know the details as to why, if he was fired or if he asked for his release. We have to wait and see, but now the attention focuses on CM Punk, I think. What's Punk going to do? Is Punk going to threaten legal action against the company? Is he going to come back once he's actually cleared to come back? Because, of course, he's out of action for 9 months. He tore his triceps at All Out. What's going to happen? Are the Bucks and Kenny Omega going to come back? Or are we going to hear, which again is my prediction, really nothing for the remainder of the year? I've said before, I don't suspect we won't see CM Punk in a ring again in 2022 because he's injured. But when it comes to the Bucks and Kenny Omega, I don't suspect we'll see them either. So we'll have to wait and see. Legal action is still a very big possibility here because Kenny Omega was meant to appear at Triple Mania, or at the very least cut a promo for a video package, and he was told he couldn't say anything because of a possible legal case coming up. So there's still a lot of ambiguity there, but that's the latest when it comes to that investigation. Let's move on to Dynamite last night, and really a chaotic end to the show. And thankfully, it's not as bad as first thought, but Hangman Page didn't finish the match last night against Jon Moxley, and it was very, very worrying watching it live happening in real time, because the AEW Dynamite main event last night was stopped mid-match due to an injury to Hangman Adam Page. Now, after being hit with a lariat clothesline, Hangman's body continued a forward motion, hitting the mat face first, at which point the referee checked on him, immediately calling for further evaluation. Hangman Adam Page was being evaluated by ringside Dr. Michael Sampson, who then made the decision to stop the match. Now, after that decision was made, Hangman Adam Page required a stretcher transport as the crew loosened the bottom rope to safely evacuate Page from the ring. As he was being transported away from the ringside area via a gurney, the crowd could be heard chanting "cowboy shit" in honor of the injured fan favorite, and it was really concerning at the time. The crowd went quiet. Clearly, everyone realized very quickly this was not part of the show, and it was very concerning. Now, AEW has since, and very quickly it must be said, issued an official statement regarding the health of Hangman Adam Page after a concerning scene ended last night's edition of Dynamite. Now, this is what the statement had to say, quote, "Hangman Adam Page was taken tonight by medical personnel to a Cincinnati trauma center and diagnosed with a concussion. He was discharged but will remain in AEW's concussion protocol. AEW and Hangman Page are grateful for the exemplary response and care of staff and local medical personnel and are appreciative of the love and support of fans everywhere." Now, as I mentioned, the cameras cut away from the scene, and those in attendance reported that Page was placed on a stretcher and the lower ring rope needed to be loosened in order to safely evacuate him from the ring. But certainly when it comes to that AEW statement, that's a positive update on it. Now, Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer has also issued an update on Page's condition. Of course, Meltzer very close to a lot of people in AEW, namely Tony Khan, the AEW president himself. So if Meltzer wanted an update on anything, he just picks up the phone and calls Tony Khan or sends him a text. Meltzer said, quote, "Another update on Page, he's doing fine." So he also confirmed that AEW had announced that Page was discharged from the hospital tonight. So again, thankfully, considering that concerning scene, which you can see playing on the screen right there, thankfully, Hangman Page was okay. And it wasn't, I mean, look, a concussion is still very serious. And clearly, it was a really serious concussion. And I think that I have to give AEW a lot of credit here, it must be said, because I know the people that don't like AEW and they have those weird accounts that they post every single botch on there, which is odd to me because botches happen in pro wrestling. Incidents like last night, they can happen. It was a lariat. It was a stiff lariat, but it was no stiffer than you would see on WWE TV or New Japan or Impact or MLW or NWA. It was a lariat. Unfortunately, it caught Hangman Page in the wrong way. He continued his forward momentum. He landed very awkwardly, but I felt the way that AEW handled that situation was exemplary. I really, really do. I think that there have been incidents in the past with AEW where clearly someone's been knocked out or they've been knocked loopy that AEW haven't handled correctly. Last night, they handled it the exact perfect way that it should have been handled. Immediately, the referee, Paul Turner, who again I think did an excellent job, checked on the talent, went over to him, wasn't getting a response. He called in Doc Sampson. Sampson got into the ring very quickly, assessed him, said nope, the match needs to be called off. They put him on a gurney. They got him out the ring fairly quickly. And what was a very chaotic ending to the show, AEW, I think, actually managed to pivot and managed to improvise very, very well. And again, is it disappointing the way that match ended? Yes, but nobody would want to see a half-conscious Hangman Page slurring around the ring or something even worse happen. So it was obviously very, very concerning, and here's hoping that Hangman Page can make a full recovery and he's fine. According to the AEW statement, he's been discharged and he's in concussion protocol. I certainly don't want to see him in the ring for a long period of time at this point, probably a month, maybe a little bit longer, depending on how quickly he can recover from the concussion and pass these concussion protocol tests. But I think the way that AEW handled it, considering how they've handled incidents similar to this in the past, and look, the magnitude of the match, a match they've been building to for weeks, it's a title match on Tuesday, a World Championship match, main event of the show. There would have been pressure for them to continue and going a different direction, but they didn't. They had the priority, the health of the performer as their priority, and I think they did a very good job. And as I mentioned, when it came to the way they pivoted and improvised after that, I also think they did a very good job, because afterwards, they were scrambling around for a little bit. The announcers were running through the card for Rampage on Friday and Dynamite next Wednesday, and talking about Hangman Page, and obviously they were panning to shots in the audience, and you could tell that it wasn't planned, and you could tell that they didn't really know what to do, and they had to move things around, but they improvised very, very well. And after weeks of wondering when MJF would be cashing in his chip for a shot at the AEW World Championship, the wrestling world now has an answer. MJF headed to the ring after the match between Moxley and Page to confront Moxley and obviously the member of the Blackpool Combat Club manager leader, William Regal, and MJF said, quote, "You want to talk about me cutting corners, you want to talk to me about being a man, these people know I'm a man. Here's what's going down. I'm going to cash in that chip in full gear, and when I do, I don't want you at 50%, I don't want you after the match, I want you at 110%, I don't want any excuses." So we're getting the match on November 19 at the Prudential Center in New Jersey. As of this recording, no other matches have been announced, but they also, the way they did the segment, and we'll talk about MJF's promo with William Regal in a second, because that was probably my favorite bit of the show. I thought it was unbelievable. I thought it's the best promo you'll probably see all week, to be honest with you. But the way they, again, improvised, the way they shot this angle is that Moxley's on the microphone, he calls out MJF, and MJF's music hit, he comes out, and he's dragging a referee with him, and he's got his chip with him. And they said, tease that you're going to cash in. And then for a split second, and it depends now how people are going to perceive this, because there are some people on social media that are obsessed that everything is a work. It's a work. And for a second, with MJF running down to the ring and the chip in the hand, you thought, oh, maybe was this like a really elaborate, way for MJF to win the championship? Because it kind of felt like, is he going to cash in the chip here? Especially with the promo earlier on about cutting corners. And are they going to have a situation where Moxley loses the AEW World Championship to MJF in his hometown? If that was a work, and that's the direction they go in, it'd be genius. You'd go, how elaborate and how planned is that? That would be phenomenal. It wasn't. They were improvising, but the crowd bought into it for a second, and then suddenly they started to think, oh, actually, is Hangman's injury, is that not legitimate? But no. MJF, thinking about what Regal had said to him earlier, said, no, I'm not going to cut corners this time. I'm going to beat you for the championship at Full Gear in November, which he will. MJF will defeat Moxley for the championship and become the AEW World Champion. I'm sure of it. But the exchange was very good. Again, the way they improvised in a really difficult situation, I thought was very good. So credit to everyone involved. Now, I spoke about that MJF and Regal confrontation. This was the best thing you will see all week, I think, on television. Now, again, we haven't seen the Bray Wyatt promo yet. That's going to happen on Friday on SmackDown, so anything's possible. But this was gripping. Now, in a deeply personal yet scathing promo, MJF took to the ring to have a compelling conversation with William Regal. Now, he told this fantastic story that he was told by his trainers, MJF, at Creator Pro Wrestling Academy, Pat Buck and Brian Myers, that he was going to have an opportunity as an extra in WWE. And the full WWE references were out, but this is when it's done well. This isn't a shot at the other company. This wasn't a shot saying WWE's the bad guy. This was just telling a story. This was reality. This was real life. Now, recalling his deep emotions, not only from performing his heart out in a match in front of William Regal, but also a one-to-one conversation where Regal indicated he was impressed by MJF. It was in that moment that Regal told MJF, "Kid, I'm going to get you a job here today." Now, kicking off a complex string of emotions, including accomplishment, pride, and joy, MJF then took the audience on an emotional roller coaster that young 19-year-old Max went on that moment, only to have heartbreak bring the entire story to a screeching halt. Regal didn't realize that MJF was only 19 and instead noted he was talented and he should keep after his dreams. Regal encouraged MJF to keep in contact, send him a match and a promo every month, until 3 months in when Regal responded with a scathing reply. MJF read a brutal email he said he received from Regal back then that stuck with him throughout the years, and according to MJF, sent him into a state of devastation. Ending the promo with his passionate catchphrase, the crowd was captivated on his every word, and it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. And what was crazy is when he came out and he started talking, he was getting booed out the building. And once he finished, the entire crowd was right there, not only in the palm of his hand, but they were cheering for him because they realized they'd been in a similar situation of chasing their dreams, just to think they'd got it for it to be ripped out from their hands. And then when you thought it was so close, then a couple of months later be told, stop getting in touch with me or whatever. It was brilliant. Now, Regal then retorted, cutting his own passionate response regarding how his day as a young man, the fire stoker of his professional wrestling dream was actual violence. And when he was a teenager, he had to fist fight actual adult men, which he can't do nowadays. So he was essentially trying to say he was trying to motivate MJF. If all MJF had was an email to haunt him for 7 years, then you've had it easy, sunshine, Regal said, which was such a good line. It really was. Now, Regal reminded MJF that he always knew he had it in him, but he has to let him down because he's taken shortcuts. Regal saying then, as he turned his back on MJF, Max, if you want to be a real bad guy, if you want to be the devil, show the world right now, or you're going to take another shortcut and come out here and act like a victim and cry. Now, while MJF was poised to use the Dynamite diamond ring on Regal, he hesitated. Regal turned back to him and said to him, quote, "You've still got a lot to prove," before leaving him in the ring. Now, of course, that played into that main event angle, which I think they probably would have done next week, but they kind of just moved things up. But again, it was just the best thing that you'll see on this show. And it's probably, again, we haven't seen Bray Wyatt this week, so it's difficult to say it's going to be the best promo you'll see this week because SmackDown and Bray Wyatt have been excellent in their promo, especially last week. But it was just brilliant. I sat there afterwards and I literally started laughing because I went, specifically after MJF's promo, because it was just so good, and it was a story, and it was real, and even if parts of it weren't real, he took you on this roller coaster, and the way he ended it, he was just basically telling you, you didn't believe in me, and I'm going to just shove it right up your ass, and I haven't finished shoving it right up there just yet, but I will, and you'll enjoy it, because I'm MJF, and I'm better than you, and you know it, and you're jealous of me, that's why you held me down, and that is why MJF will be, and already kind of is, the single biggest babyface in AEW history, because everyone starts to sympathize with him. You might not like MJF, you might not believe in MJF, but if you have any doubts about MJF, watch that promo, because that is so good, because you can relate to that. You might not like MJF's actions, and William Regal, the way he responded, set him up so perfectly. Because he basically said, you've taken shortcuts to get how you are right now. Don't take shortcuts going forward. And MJF isn't taking shortcuts going forward. So when he wins the title, he'll be winning it as a babyface. It was such a great babyface promo. And again, the way the crowd were booing him when he came out and when he finished, and when he said, I'm better than you and you know it, everyone agreed with him. To the point then that William Regal, when he said his first words, he was getting booed by the crowd because they went, wait a minute, this guy screwed this guy over. When he is talented, I might not like him, but he is talented, and that's not right. That's wrong. It was just genius. And that is why, if AEW hasn't got an extension on MJF and they've just given him an improved deal, that's why it's bad business. Because you will, and you should, lock this guy down. He is the future of AEW. There is no doubt about it. If you have any doubts about MJF, which you shouldn't, if you had any doubts, it's just stick and it's not that good or he's not a good wrestler or whatever, that's pro wrestling last night. Because it was real and it made you feel. It made you believe. And as I mentioned, you will not find a better promo, I don't think, this week. Bray Wyatt's got a lot to live up to. He's got a lot of competition. And I believe in Bray Wyatt too. But that was, it was sensational. Absolutely sensational. Now, we had a couple of other incidents last night at Dynamite, one being Riho. Riho is back on AEW TV after a 5-month absence. She came to the defense of AEW Interim's Women's World Champion Toni Storm after defeating Hikaru Shida, because we saw a brawl after the match. Rebel attacked Storm with crutches. We saw Saraya attack Britt Baker and brawl through the crowd. But Riho made her return, possibly beginning a feud with Jamie Hayter. We'll have to wait and see, but Riho is back in AEW, and she got a great pop as well, so interesting to see what happens there. Finally, some Ring of Honor news, because we have the next Ring of Honor pay-per-view be announced. Tony Khan kind of hinted at it yesterday, but we now have an update on this because it was announced during the Ring of Honor World Championship match between Chris Jericho and Dalton Castle that we will get Final Battle Saturday, December 10. Now, it's going to be actually quite an earlier pay-per-view. It's going to be at 4 p.m. Eastern time. Now, commentary noting there is no college football that week related to the Heisman Saturday as the rationale for the date of the event. The graphic on screen display on Dynamite noted the event would take place in Arlington, Texas. I did think that was going to be the case. I did think we were going to get a final battle. And I think then, during that pay-per-view, is when we'll get the announcement of that Ring of Honor television deal, which Tony Khan also hinted at yesterday too. So there you go. That's the latest AEW / Ring of Honor news for you today. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe bottom right hand corner. Let me know your thoughts on the news stories in the comment section below, and I'll speak for you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.